Howdy, this here's Professor Udi Guru, coming to you from wherever the heck I am. Today's movie is about Marvin Charles Siefken, Siefken, and a story that he told me many times because he had Alzheimer's. Disclaimer, he had Alzheimer's when he told this story, but it was about 1941, December 6, 1941. And they say that, people with senility remember things well that are from the distant past. So, he told the story the same way every time. I'm going to tell you the story, and that's my source. It's my only source, although I did start researching this morning before breakfast, and it started slowing me down. I just want to make a quick video here. Marvin used to tell me, and anybody else who would listen, that in 1941, December 6, 1941, the day before Pearl Harbor, he was at a White House dinner hosted by Eleanor Roosevelt, the First Lady, and she gave a talk, and one of the things she said was something to the effect of, "Isn't it horrible what happened at Pearl Harbor?" And this is the day before it happened. Okay, that's Marvin's story. He said he was a member of the press, or that the dinner was for the press. There was a dinner on December 6, 1941, hosted by Eleanor Roosevelt at the White House, but that's all we know about it. We don't know who was there, except that there were 34 guests. That's all we know. We don't know who was there. And this information is from Grok AI, so, it has to be confirmed whether it's even true. Grok makes mistakes all the time, but would Marvin invent this story? I don't know why he would. He said he was at that time, he was the head of the circulation department at a big Minneapolis St. Paul newspaper. So I wasn't able to confirm that either, but I was able to confirm by the 1930 census that Marvin was a manager of a department in a newspaper. And yes, he lived in Minneapolis most of his life. In 1940, he was living in Minneapolis, and he was a salesman of ventilation equipment. And in 1942, he was living in New York City, working for Air Control Corporation of New York. Doing what? I don't know, but it sounds like more ventilation. So I know it sounds a little bit strange that he was doing ventilation equipment in 1940 and 1942, but between that and 1941, he was head of the circulation department for a big newspaper and attending White House dinners. I know it sounds odd, but I'm just telling you what Marvin told me. He was sane, he was reliable, he was demented. So, one time we were watching the news, because we lived in the same house. We watched a little feature they did on Alzheimer's syndrome, or whatever they call it. And he watched it with great interest. And when the feature was over, he turned to me and he looked at me and he said, I used to know what Alzheimer's is, but I have forgotten. And that's how he spoke. He spoke in a little bit of a formal way. In fact, when he lived in New York, his address is like Park Avenue, Upper East Side, but also very close to a German area, middle-class German area. So it could have been either one of those areas based on the address that was given in 1942 on his draft registration. I believe he was in World War II. He was born in 1901, probably too young to serve in World War I. Yeah, he was in World War II. He played the bugle. He used to give his caretaker, Mac, a hard time. If you want more stories on Mac and Marvin, just go to my air car, what was it, air car eulogy? I don't remember. I'll put a link at the end of the video so you can watch more stories of Mac and Marvin. Mac was in his 70s and Marvin was 88. Russ Smith also lived there. He was probably in his mid-70s approximately. And the reason I say this is because I have 2 pictures of Marvin and 1 picture of Russ. I don't have a real picture of Mac. Albert Sidney Johnston McDonald Jr. is born in L.A., raised in Texas for the most part, I guess. Let's get back to Eleanor for a minute before I start on all this stuff about who Marvin was and where he lived and who he lived with and why, because I'll get to that too for the hardcore listeners out there who want to know everything I think I know. So anyhow, on December 7th, which was the day of the Pearl Harbor attack, oddly enough, Eleanor Roosevelt had a scheduled radio lecture or talk. So she went ahead and gave it, but before she started on her regular script that she had planned, she made some comments about Pearl Harbor. And she was the first person from the White House, according to Grok. I haven't confirmed all this stuff. It's according to Grok. She was the first person from the White House to discuss the Pearl Harbor attack, which I find a little strange. She's the first lady, not the president. The president gave his address on the following day, December 8th. So to me, the fact that Eleanor Roosevelt gave her comments on the day of the attack and she was the first might have meant that she had something to clean up from the previous day when she had let the cat out of the bag where Marvin was attending a little dinner at the White House. That's my theory. I believe Marvin's story. I think it's true. And I think that she was told to provide a cover story for her earlier remarks of December 6th by giving actual recorded and documented remarks on December 7th. So that in the future, if somebody ever brought up her remarks of December 6th, they could point at the well-documented remarks of December 7th that came when they were supposed to, that they could point at that and say, oh, you're confused. She said those things on December 7th. But she did say she had been wanting to say something for months, or what was it she said on December 7th?
For months now, the knowledge that something of this kind might happen has been hanging over our heads, and yet it seemed impossible to believe, impossible to drop the everyday things of life and feel that there was only one thing which was important: preparation to meet an enemy, no matter where he struck. That is all over now, and there is no more uncertainty.
I'm just going to give you a little more background. The reason I posted a photo of Russ Smith, our other roommate in this house, which was a duplex in Lodi, California in 1989, is that my favorite photo of Marvin was taken the same day and the same place, at the UPS place. Mac had a mail order business at the time, so he took a trip to the UPS building in Stockton, and we went with him. And I had a camera with me, so I took pictures of Russ and Marvin outside the UPS building while Mac was inside sending his packages. And the other picture of Marvin is probably at the park in Lodi where we like to go and look at the ducks. Well, I could go on, but I think if you want more stories about Marvin and Mac and their personalities, which is entertaining, you should go watch my air car movie, and I'll link that on the end. Air car project, the early years of the air car project. What I call that video, anyways, air car eulogy. I don't remember. So yeah, Mac and Marvin had known each other a long, long time, and at some point, probably in the mid 1980s, I would guess, Mac discovered that Marvin was living in a nursing home, being killed by the food and drugs, which was Mac's way of putting it, but I tend to agree with that. And he got him out and took him home and, started taking care of him. Gave him his own room and helped him spend his Social Security check. Obviously, that's going to happen too. Marvin was, the first time I met him, he was still taking notes as we would drive around town doing Mac's errands and stuff. Marvin would be taking notes and looking at his watch, saying, write down what we're doing at what time. And Mac felt that he did that because he couldn't remember anything any other way. So, of course, by the time I last saw him, he wasn't even doing that. But he was complaining constantly about, he thought that Mac had stolen his bugle, which his beloved memento from the war, because he was the bugler. He was 5'4", a very small person, so I guess they made him play the bugle, toot, toot, toot. Mac was a pack rat. His house and his yard were stacked to the ceiling. There was a bunch of junk out in the yard, covered with tarps. He had 10 tons of junk, and every week he went to the flea market and got more and just added it to the pile, saying, this is going to be useful someday, this is going to be useful someday. He had got stuck in Lodi. His car broke down in Lodi, just like the song, stuck in Lodi again, and he stayed for 30 years. And while I was there, he had a friend that was rebuilding an old moving van for him, rebuilding the engine. And when that was done, Mac loaded, instead of disposing of his 10 tons of junk, he loaded up his 10 tons of junk in the moving van and drove that puppy over the Continental Divide at 5 miles per hour and back 3 times to get all his stuff, because he had a piece of property in Montrose, Colorado, out in the country somewhere. And so he and Marvin moved to Montrose, and that's where they are still. They died a long time ago, and that's where they're buried. Marvin was, I believe he was an only child. He was never married, had no children. He was raised by an aunt and uncle. I think probably his mother died or something. His father was still alive in 1942. His father was listed as the person who could find him on the draft registration. Let's take a quick peek at the public record for Marvin Charles Siefken. Here we can see that 2 months after Pearl Harbor, Marvin is working in New York City, living in New York City, 181 East 80th Street, New York City. That's Upper East Side, date of birth, etc. This is his actual father, who was not the person who raised him. As far as we know, he was raised by his aunt and uncle. This is who he worked for and their address. So it looks like he's probably in the air conditioning business. I couldn't find this company, but it says Corp period, so I assume that means corporation and not Corps. In other words, not military. But there's no way of knowing exactly because I didn't do very much research for this movie. Okay, so that's where he's at in 1942. In 1940, he's in Minneapolis, and he's also, in 1940, working in ventilation as a salesman. Except he's not working. He has 0 income, and he's been unemployed for 6 weeks in March and April. This is his aunt, Sarah Terhune. She's 84. I don't know why they're calling these two boarders partners. He's actually a nephew, but there might be a reason why they're being called partners. Partners of whom, it doesn't say. Doesn't really matter, but it also says here that Marvin is looking for work and that he hasn't had any. And something about, I think last year's salary was $700. And this person, this housemate, is a divorced 65-year-old woman who is the president of an employment agency, and she's not unemployed, which is a good thing if you're the president of an employment agency. Point being is that it seems in 1940 he's doing ventilation equipment sales. In 1942 he appears to be doing something similar in New York City, maybe the same company, who knows. But in 1941 he said he was head of the circulation department for a big Minneapolis St. Paul newspaper. Well, maybe he was. Let's look at 1930. Minneapolis again. He spent most of his life in Minneapolis. He was born and raised there. And there's his aunt and uncle, Sarah Terhune and Steve Terhune. And there is Marvin C. Siefken, nephew, age 28. He was born in 1901, May 27, 1901. And there you go. He's a district manager for a newspaper. So we have every reason to think that he's not making all this stuff up. Not every reason, but I think we could take him halfway seriously, don't you? 1905 Minneapolis State Census. Let's see if we can find Marvin here. There he is. And here he's like 4 years old. 4 years old, Marvin C. And these are his actual parents. His father's a jeweler. Oh, look. And Stephen and Sarah, his aunt and uncle, live next door. Highly likely that Sarah is his mother's sister, but who knows? I haven't looked that far into it. All right, now if we go on up to 1910, first off, there is 181 East 80th Street, where he lived in New York City in 1942. And here's the area he lived in. Yorkville is a middle-class German area. He's here, and this is the ritzy area. We got lobster here, we got caviar here. This is the Upper East Side. Okay. So whether he was German middle class or Upper East Side, I don't know. That building looks pretty nice to me. I don't see any graffiti on it, but in 1930 it probably looked even better. I don't know. This is Mac. So anyhow, that's about all I know. As for whether his story is true, I'll let you be the judge of that. I do believe it is. After all the shenanigans around 9/11, I could believe pretty much anything. But go ahead, think what you want. Let me know if you have any ideas. Leave a comment. Thanks for showing up. This is Professor U.D. Guru, and I'll see you in the next movie. Bye-bye.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm speaking to you tonight at a very serious moment in our history. The Cabinet is convening and the leaders in Congress are meeting with the President. The State Department and Army and Navy officials have been with the President all afternoon. In fact, the Japanese ambassador was talking to the President at the very time that Japan's airships were bombing our citizens in Hawaii and the Philippines and sinking one of our transports loaded with lumber on its way to Hawaii. By tomorrow morning, the members of Congress will have a full report and be ready for action. In the meantime, we, the people, are already prepared for action. For months now, the knowledge that something of this kind might happen has been hanging over our heads, and yet it seemed impossible to believe, impossible to drop the everyday things of life and feel that there was only one thing which was important, preparation to meet an enemy no matter where he struck. That is all over now, and there is no more uncertainty. We know what we have to face, and we know that we are ready to face it. I should like to say just a word to the women in the country tonight. I have a boy at sea on a destroyer. For all I know, he may be on his way to the Pacific. 2 of my children are in coast cities on the Pacific. Many of you all over this country have boys in the services who will now be called upon to go into action. You have friends and families in what has suddenly become a danger zone. You cannot escape anxiety. You cannot escape a clutch of fear at your heart. And yet I hope that the certainty of what we have to meet will make you rise above these fears. We must go about our daily business more determined than ever to do the ordinary things as well as we can. And when we find a way to do anything more in our communities, to help others, to build morale, to give a feeling of security, we must do it. Whatever is asked of us, I am sure we can accomplish it. We are the free and unconquerable people of the United States of America. To the young people of the nation, I must speak a word tonight. You are going to have a great opportunity. There will be high moments in which your strength and your ability will be tested. I have faith in you. I feel as though I was standing upon a rock. That rock is my faith in my fellow citizens. Now we will go back to the program which we had arranged for tonight.